今天下午第一场是由我是皮肤科专科医师张英瑞医师跟整形外科专科医师曾文山院长一起来主持。下面这个 section 哈，那第一个讲者是来自韩国的吴承珉医师。那吴承珉医师他是目前是 ON Clinic 的院长，他也是大韩雷射皮肤与毛发学会的理事。他今天将要跟大家演讲的题目是动物实验跟这个人体的解剖对于这个埋线的技术，针对 tissue 跟这个线的交互作用。It's my great honor to invite Dr. Xiaoming Oh to give a lecture. Dr. Oh is currently the director of ON Clinic, and he's also the president of ON Medical Company, and he is now the executive board member of the Korean Academy of Trichology. The topic is going to talk about is the thread lifting technique based on the tissue thread reaction with animal and cadaver examination. Dr. Oh, please.
Thank you very much for introducing me. Hello, I'm Dr. Oh, and it's really my big honor to have a chance to present my opinion in this place. Thank you. This time I want to speak about the tissue thread reaction and the pinch anatomy. About 4 years ago, I was very wondering about the techniques and the injection depths. At the time, we write the book about the safe filler injection depths, and next time we are thinking about the thread insertion. And at the time, I make a communication with many various Korean doctors, and we make a new concept, the pinch anatomy. It means the moving anatomy and dynamic anatomy, somewhat different from the static or classical anatomy. Before my presentation, I always want to talk about the convergence. I think that aesthetic medicine is somewhat different from the other type of any medicine area. We must know about the art and the anatomy and the skills and another material engineering and 3D technology. Former speakers all talk about these various fields of the science. So I am very interested in the convergence, and that will lead us to the more advanced state. So I always think of them, convergence. And now I am talking about the 3 elements. Anatomy. Previously, many excellent speakers speak about the anatomy. So this time I want to speak somewhat different one. This time I want to talk about the movable layers. Facial layer is like this. Generally 5 layers: skin, subcutaneous, and smooth and its extensions. It is also somewhat specific membrane. It covers the face and thick in the lateral space and thin in the mid-space. And they encapsulate some important organs like the superficial temporal artery, vein, and mimic muscles. So layer 3, we must understand layer 3. Very important. Layer 2 is above the layer 3, and the layer 4 is sub-smooth or under the smooth. So layer 3, the understanding of the layer 3 is most important one. This is the layer 3. This is the layer 3. When we remove the subcutaneous pad, we can see the layer 3. And it is very continuous. And it is the membranous fibrous tissue, but it is not a single layer membranous tissue. It consists at least 3 layers of the fibrous tissue. So it can encapsulate vessels. So it can encapsulate the muscles. So this is very important layer. Like this, layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. Layer 3 is the STF and smooth and its extensions. In this picture, you can see the The layer 3 encapsulates superficial temporal artery and vein, and important facial lobe passes through under the layer 3. So, pinch techniques, and layer all related. Movable plane. I wonder, when I move my face, especially temple area, when I move my face, my cheek, anterior cheek, lateral cheek, or neck, which layer is moving now? In the view of the thread lifting, the temple area is most important. So I started my research from the temple area pinch technique. And also I started the research about the movable plane from the temple area. Okay, movie please. This is the temple area. And the sonograph shows the movement. You can see the right side of the movie, the pulsating round circles. That is the superficial temporal artery, which is enclosed by the layer 3 superficial temporal fascia. So you can see that movement. The movement is mainly under the superficial temporal fascia. At that area, innominate fascia, layer 4. Layer 4 is more movable than subcutaneous tissue at temple area. It's very important. So, if we want to do the lifting, so-called lifting, from using of this temple area, we must try to moving the layer 4 and somewhat layer 2. This is some famous Western doctor make this. The mechanism is like this: collection of the tissue using bidirectional cog or angulation or fascia techniques. We do the experiment using the bidirectional cog. When we use the bidirectional cog, the midpoint of the cog tissue is elevated, protruded. So, if we do the facial lifting using the bidirectional cog from the hairline, sometimes the middle area of the bidirectional cog is exactly coincide with the zygomatic arch. At that time, patient's face changes to the diamond shape, protrusion of the zygomatic arch. So they don't like it, make complicated. So if you want to use the bidirectional cog, if you want somewhat long thread, you must insert from the inside the hairline, or from down to upside, or use the short bidirectional cog, which can make the mid area of the bidirectional cog just above the zygomatic arch. That makes the her face more egg-shaped, without protrusion of the zygomatic arch. So, insertion from the under the zygomatic arch and the direction to the upward is okay, very good. But must be careful of the terminal area, insertion area dimpling. Okay, that is the fascia fixation technique. Deep temporal fascia is the unique structure in the view of the lifting. It is the extension of the periosteum, so very strong. But generally, periosteum is very strongly attached to the bone. But DTF is the extension of the periosteum, but under the DTF, there are some muscle named temporalis muscle. So we can use the DTF for strong fixation. And upper side of the temporalis muscle and the temporalis muscle extension, there are some about 1 cm of slightly thick area of the DTF. And that is somewhat thick, so very useful to make a fixation point. And ligament system. Nowadays in Korea, many doctors are focused on the ligament system. I heard the ligament in strengthening technique by Taiwanese doctor. injection some collagen stimulating fillers to the fibrous ligament, strong ligament. I learned this from Taiwanese doctors. This is the famous article. This is a histographic study of the fibroid adipose connective check system. In this picture, the basic structure is the subcutaneous pad is dense, more dense and straight, fibrous adipose connective tissue. But in the deep pad area, there are oblique and relatively loose pad, fibrous adipose connective tissue. But the important one is all are different as to their position, as to the stage. So I think that pinch, moving, all are different as to the site. So if we understand all of the difference between their site, pinch, the change by the pinching, or the movement, if we understand all of them, the elaboration of the lifting technique will become. This is for example. This woman has some prominent zygomatic arch and hump. And dimpling, somewhat depression, cheek depression. In this woman, I do the pull downward, but her skin is not moved to under this dot line. It is same to you. You can do that. Pull down. Your pace will not move to the downward. Because why? Zygomatic-cutaneous ligament, strong ligament. But when I pull this skin upward, my skin moves to the upward. That means the direction of the strong ligament is like this. So I pull upward, it moves to the up. But pull downward, no movement. That is the meaning of the fibroadipose connective tissue system and the ligament system. For example, in this area like this, but not exactly, but the direction of the deep area, movable area, the ligament direction is like this, I think that. So this is the Brian Mendelssohn's famous picture. Nowadays, Korean doctors think, and the most important one is the movement of the ligament system. And the reinforcement of the fibrous connective tissue is very important concept. So like this. Strong ligament, when I use the bidirectional cork, it makes the soft tissue movement to the middle of the bidirectional corks. But more advanced one. Left side, more strong and more thick and more wide ligament system. Right side, more weak, relatively weak ligament system. And lie down. We can do the lifting effect by using like this subcutaneous pad insertion, subsmash insertion, and direction like this. I think that evidence-based medicine is our duty, most important. Our conscience, but evidence-based medicine always work after the clinician's vision, trial. So nowadays, many Korean doctors try to make an evidence about this. This is the ligament system. Usually, I use the DTF for strong fixation point and loras fascia for strong fixation point or strong hanging point from the DTF. And the plexisma auricular ligament for the strong fixation point. But almost all of our doctors use this point for the fixation point, for the direction of the lifting. Why? That is the most strong in faith. Previous speakers all said and talk about this ligament and this fascia. And technique. This is temple area. The limitation of this research is the cadaver is very poor pet, so very thin. So subcutaneous pad is not so thick, but superficial temporal fascia encapsulates the superficial temporal artery, and the facial lobe is under the STF. Soft pinch is like this, because the layer between the superficial temporal fascia and the subcutaneous pad, the connection is not so strong. We do the pinch and cut. In the picture A and B, you can see the superficial temporal artery with not damaged and all of the moving of the surrounded fat tissue. Superficial temporal artery has the volume, the height. So though it encapsulated by the superficial temporal fascia, but the space of the superficial temporal artery is subcutaneous fat layer, protruded. But when we do the pinch and cut, the vessel is not damaged. Tissue. You can see the left side, STA, superficial temporal is not damaged, and the STF is also intact. Deep pinch. When you make it, we do to the strong power, that means the deep pinch. And by the deep pinch, you can see the right side of the slide, STF is removed. I showed the sonographic finding of the temple, and you can see the movement of the under the STF layer. I think that that is somewhat related. So I think that this type of dynamic anatomy can make some changing about our procedure and medicine. Okay, vessel damage prevention with pinch. Main three vessels is superficial temporal artery, zygomatic orbital artery, and transverse facial artery. Superficial temporal artery and zygomatic orbital artery are encapsulated by the STF. So, if you pinch it softly and evaluate the thickness of the subcutaneous pad and advance smooth, no vessel damage is possible. And if you do the thick pinch, then advance deep, you can pass under the superficial temporal fascia. Transverse facial artery is in the parotid gland. So if you pinch this area and evaluate the thickness of the skin and fat and the fascia, and pass the needle or cannula just above the base of the pinching area, you can prevent transverse facial artery. But sometimes, inevitably, we make the damage to the vessels. When we advance the cannula or needle from here, some clicking sense and edema or the protrusion evokes. That means the vessel damage. But this area, zygomatic orbital artery area, zygomatic superficial temporal artery area is somewhat no problem, because vessel damage transverse direction is easily hemostat by the vasoconstriction. But if you do the procedure, during the procedure, the bleeding is just front of the ear, and the protrusion makes the longitudinal protrusion, means the vertical damage of the superficial temporal artery. Generally, vessel makes the hemostat by the vasoconstriction. But when the damage is by the longitudinal damage, vasoconstriction is very difficult. So it requires time, sometimes over 1 week. Without the full recovery, some exercise makes the blood pressure elevation. This area, longitudinal protrusion, we must be careful of the compression. Even if after 1 week, delayed bleeding makes a severe hematoma. But when we do just protrusion, small amount of protrusion, just lateral part of the retinal canthus, that means the transverse zygomatic orbital artery damage. That is the transverse vessel damage. Don't worry. Just 3 or 4 days compression is sufficient. So we can prevent the vessel damage by various pinching technique, but it is not absolute. As I told you that, as the very difference has some difference as to the site and as to the PET state. But be careful. When the bleeding is just the front area of the tragus, longitudinal protrusion means the superficial temporal artery longitudinal damage. That means this is very important. Nerve damage. Facial or frontal branch pass over the zygomatic arch mid-third one, just under the SMAS. So when we do the pinch and make the space at this zygomatic arch area, make the space for the smooth passing. But we press and using the needles and pass over the zygomatic arch mid-third one with the scraping the bone makes damage. Always here, I think that pinch and make the room or space would be the more safe than the press. This is like this. Facial or frontal branch come out of the parotid gland and over the zygomatic arch and pass the innominate fascia, layer 4 at the temporal area. So we can select the layer. About 4 or 5 years, I and Dr. Kim discuss about this, and we make the concept of a pinch anatomy. But still, we have many debate, and we will continuously study about this. And we always use the press with the pinch. Many doctors argue, also in Korea. This is the press, this is the pinch. But press, this is the neck. Neck sonography. Left side is just touching of the probe to the neck. The thickness of the subcutaneous pad is 0.75. But the right picture, when we press the probe, the thickness of the fat is 0.48. About 40% reduction of the pad thickness. It's very important. When we use we insert the thread in the neck area. Generally we use the press technique. At the time, subcutaneous pad layer, the thickness of the subcutaneous pad decreased, and generally, thread will be inserted more deep layer. Many doctors try to insert the thread in the subcutaneous pad layer, but when we dissect the cadaver, almost 1/3 of the thread is just under the SMAS. Because generally we use the pinch and press. Press makes the thickness of the subcutaneous pad decrease. I think that this is another of the features of the dynamic anatomy. Change. The thickness of the subcutaneous pad is changed. Deep pad also changed. So we try to make the study about this. And I always use the DTF. I don't use just the floating tie. I tagging the superficial temporal fascia. And handle the movable. STF is very weak, so it is not for the fixation point. But DTF,
시작할게요. 찍으세요.
I elevate the STF and DTF. I use the hooking needle. You can see that.
Okay.
Very strong. Very strong. So DTF is very useful to the strong fixation point. It can endure the power of the pulling down. If we use the very strong thread and good technique, and if we understand the tissue change about the, after the thread insertion, I think that the answer to the effective thread lifting is there. Okay, this is lower fascia, just front of the. But almost all of the doctors use this point. Why? We just know. The vector is like that, and that's very convenient to use. But this is a very strong point and very fit for the fixation point. And auricular cut, placissimo auricular ligament also. Previous speakers, all of the previous speakers use this area point, this point, because very strong point, that fit for the fixation point. And thread tissue interaction. We just published these articles. We studied for 1 year. Yucatan P, very expensive, very expensive. We feed 4 pigs and get the tissues. This is the thread. At the time, the pathologist makes over the 1,500 slides, but get the small number of the useful slides. The consequence is like this. We check the historical finding and we rearrange the result like this. Tissue change result. 1. Newly developed file of connective tissue. Filler or thread are all foreign body. All foreign body. They stimulate the weak inflammatory reactions and activate the fibroblast and activate the inflammatory cells, and they make the fibrosis. But good foreign body, smooth or fit for the body. Such materials don't make the severe inflammatory reaction like granulomatous reaction. Number 2, merging. The fibrous tissue is not only around the thread, spread. There is merging. And at 1 month, myofibroblast activated. As you said that, when we take the wound, when we get the wound contracture. But the thread insertion is just very pinpoint insertion, minor damage. But after 1 month, myofibroblast is activated. Fibroblast changed to their myofibroblast forms. So we already experienced when we insert the thread, the jowling area, mono thread, we know that experimentally, and we know that, somewhat improved. Skin texture and jowling somewhat improved. Why? But nowadays we find some answer. Of course, we did more answers and more experiments. And increased capillary vessel size. Previous study says that insertion of the PDO thread makes the skin texture improvement. But they can't explain why. Capillary size and fat cell denaturation. This is 1 month picture. The black circle all are inflammatory cells. Even inflammatory cell volume is more larger than the fibrous tissue. Inflammatory main, fibrous is lesser. And you can see the past cell denaturation, contracted past cell. And we can see the myofibroblast, but it requires some specific staining. So we can see the myofibroblast in this slide. And 3 months, inflammation subside. And dense fibrous tissue. We know that by our experience. Oh, when I insert the thread at the 3 months, very tight, very good. After the 3 months, very good. At the time, all of the edema and inflammation subside, but I don't know, but at 3 months, the result is very good. Because 6 months, fibrous capsule thinned and thread fragmentation. This is most important pictures. Past cell denaturation, fibrous capsule, and fibrous bridging to other side. And degradation of PDO is very important. Polymer degradation pattern is very specific. The Quill thread company revealed that the tensile strength decreased about 50% after 6 weeks. But the left side graph derived from the material area article. They checked the PDO implant, the volume of the PDO. But volume of the PDO is stable until 12 weeks. Why this difference? Like this, volume decrease started about 20 weeks later, but the strength rapidly degraded. The answer is it. Polymer degrade from their center of the. So when we failed to reserve the thread, the morphology is stable, but the color is slightly changed. Such a thread will fragmented by the power. Because the PDO degraded by the hydration, moisture, and air. So we always check the thread, the strength, because like this, in a degradation. It is same. We can find this as 3 months slide. Central area degradation. Very interesting. So we must know that implant is not only filler but also thread. All are foreign body, but suitable for the human. And foreign body reaction to collagen synthesis. And new synthesized collagen will last for more 1 year. But after that, all are disappeared. And this newly synthesized collagen will reinforce the fibrous connective systems. So we must consider mechanical effect, post effect, early period effect by the core, shape, and the power of the thread, elasticity, and other specific features of the thread. But continuous effect can be derived from such a chemical reactions, tissue thread interaction. We must do the more study about this. And thread lifting is generally blind technique. So the consequence can be different from the practitioner's skills and mind and techniques and other things. So VR technique will help us these limitations. And in this year, later on in this year, we will make the VR training system, which can be helpful to prevent the vessel injection of the filler. We are now making now. Okay. And I want to talk about the genetics. We are all somewhat different. In the field of the aesthetics, collagen and elastin, then skin aging, we are all different. If we can find the SNP, single nucleotide polymorphism, about the skin aging and the collagen degradation and elastin aging, elastin degradation. If we find that, if we can find that, we can use the CRISPR-Cas9 and correct such a aging process. And diagnostic liquid biopsy can also help us in the build-up. I always think of the convergence. This will make our future. And gene therapy, if possible, gene therapy is possible, but it has some ethnic problem. So it's not easy problem, but I think that it is not a future, just above our future. Very dear. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. O. Dr. O, he introduced the importance of the anatomy, as well as the techniques that he emphasized, the pinch technique to identify the layer of the tissue. And also, he just explained his research on the tissue, thread and tissue reaction by animal model. And also he raised a topic of the future development. Is there any comment or question from the audience? Okay, Dr. Liang, please. 有没有麦克风？
Thanks for your wonderful lecture again. Yes, I have one question. I see the research you show the PDO threads maybe subside maybe 5 to 6 months. So, in your opinion, what's the time of reinforcement for the thread insertion? In your opinion?
Previously, I think that, as you know, see that at the 3 months, the fibrous connective tissue is very stable and most dense. And at the 6 months, it is degraded and thinning. So I think that from 3 to 6 or 6 to 9, all okay, I think. But sometimes, previously, I extracted some fragmented thread. At the time, I checked the tensile strength of the thread. Generally, cutting thread has the originally 8 Newton. But the molding thread has the 45 Newtons. I extract the thread after 8 weeks of my procedure. At the time, I get the fragmented thread and send to the factory and check the tensile strength. At the time, exactly the half, 18 Newtons. And some more different is that if we insert the cork thread, it makes more large, but loose but large fibrous connective tissue. There are some difference, but we can't check that when we do the pig experiment. So next, if we have another chance to study such animal examination, we will compare the monothread and the cork thread, the various cork thread. Finally, consequently, I do the reinforcement procedure exactly at 3 months. And the patients don't want that. After 1 year, I do the reprocedure 1 year. But I recommend the patient always from about 3 months.
So in your daily practice, you reinforcement of the thread, you will maybe 3 months after the first treatment, right?
Yeah.
So how about the next? In your opinion, because we know the dermal filler, like HA, if we reinforcement about half a year, we can see the effect will prolonged. So how about thread? Do you observe the similar effect, or maybe like maybe 3 months?
No. When I do the next procedure, I will do the 1 year later. Because the pillow is somewhat different. Pillow is very complicated. So generally, I use the 3 months and 1 year.
Okay, because why I asked you the question, because now in my daily practice I see some video threads not the effects maybe just like your study 3 to 6 months. So I tell my patient you need to do the thread 3 to 6 months. If the effect just all gone, maybe half a year over 1 year, you come to my my OPD, will see the effect just gone. So we must do again from the beginning. So if like filler, so because my day practice I combine the thread with filler, so I tell my patient you come back and do the same half a year. So maybe because the time the case I followed not very long enough, so I just wonder, just like filler, maybe we can just maybe the first 3 months we do 3 times, and maybe the effect will prolong. So it's my maybe you can do this research.
Yeah. Yes, I think that that's very important one.
Okay, thank you.
I will discuss later.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Because of the time limitation, I'll present a memorial plaque on behalf of the TA, MS, for your contribution to this Congress.